Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with one of the most awesome knife consults I've ever gotten to do. Today we're going to be talking about some GTC knives. A lot of people in the knife community might only know GTC as the designer of the Zero Tolerance 0055. The 0055 came out a couple of years ago and featured the design of the Airborne, designed by Cecchini or Gustavo Cecchini. Gus lives in Brazil. He is a Brazilian knife maker who's been making knives since about 2004. But in that amount of time, he has created some of the most innovative and beautiful knives on the market, and he has certainly established a style all his own. And we're going to talk about him and some of the awesome knives that he's made. On the table today, I have a full custom Airborne and a full custom Stampede. He makes over 20 different models, but the Airborne is the knife that was made popular by the 0055, and this is a truly special one from a very recent blade show, and so I want to talk to you guys about these knives and about Gus in particular. But before we get too far into the discussion, I wanted to give a big thank you to my friend Josh. He goes by Old Sluggy on Instagram, and he's a good friend of mine. I've met him at the shows. He is very outgoing, extremely friendly, and very, very funny. A very fun guy. He also runs a Instagram and Facebook group called Don't Stop Now Productions. This is him and a group of his friends who put together a lot of bally song videos, but also some other knife-related content. So follow them on the various social media forms. So thank you so much to Josh for sending these two priceless knives, and it's really exciting to get to talk about them. I've been a fan of Gus's work for as long as I can remember. As long as I've even liked knives, I can remember liking his pieces because his are very unique, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, on the table today are GTC knives. So Gustavo Cecchini started making knives back in 2004. He started living while he was living on a farm. Using some very basic farm equipment, he was able to fabricate some very basic knives, and he made the next step into the folder game and quickly gained popularity within Brazil. He won an award shortly after becoming a folding knife maker as the best new knife maker in Brazil sometime in like 2006. And from there, it sort of took off. He really started to develop some very unique things. Namely, early on in the game, he developed GTC bearings. If you're looking at custom knives from a few years ago, some makers would tout that they had GTC bearings in their knives. What Gustavo created was the stainless steel fixed ball bearing system that a lot of people used in knives. Now, of course, this has been copied and iterated by a lot of other companies at this point, but he really developed that early on, at least in terms of its application towards the use in knives. He developed a pivot bearing system with high-quality stainless steel cages and bearings, and those were widely sold to a lot of custom and even production knife makers for some time there. Now that there are other pivot systems, but this is still something that is a source of pride and really, really awesome. We take bearings for granted nowadays, but it's important to understand that this did come from somewhere, and Gus had a certain role to play in that. Now, he has also done some pretty impressive things. I talked to him about, I remember meeting him at Blade Show 2018, where I was super impressed by his integral knives. He was taking a sheet of titanium and cutting the designs in each side and then folding it, but there was only a bridge at this point, which was different than most people who take a block of milled titanium or a block of titanium and they mill out their integral. He was taking a sheet and folding it. It was very unique, and I showed him my Peter Rosenti that I had at the time, and he said, "Guess who showed Peter how to make an integral knife?" And so it's just really cool to me. He also made the milled type back in the day. Gus has really done some very innovative things as we go along, as he's gone along. Something else that you'll recall from the 0055 and is featured on both of these knives is the SLT system, the spring-loaded tab flipper system. A lot like many of the other knife makers in the world, flipper tabs are somewhat of an eyesore to some. A lot of knife makers don't enjoy having big flipper tabs for their flipper knives, and so some people have developed some hidden systems. The Lee Williams kickstop is similar in some ways, in that there is a floating piece of metal that is separate from both the blade and the handle. It is spring-loaded and pivoted on the blade itself, and there's a spring holding it flush against the handle, and if you pull it back, it reaches a certain point where it interacts with the blade tang, and then you push it in, and it flings the blade out. Now, Zero Tolerance did a slight modification where they put a rounded tip on this, likely for more universal comfort as you're doing this, and Gustavo was very proud when he saw that, but the action carries over. If you're familiar with the action on the ZT, the actual custom knives feel very similar in terms of their deployment, and they even sound the same. It has a very unique sound to it as the spring-loaded tab retracts into place and the blade flies out. It's a very unique opening mechanism, and it's very enjoyable. It's got a certain fidget factor to it in the sense that you can play with this tab separately from deploying the knife, and so there is that certainly as well. What it does do is that it hides the flipper tab in both the closed and the open position. So in both of these situations, the handle lines remain crisp and the art remains, but the functionality is still there. This is a system designed by Gus, and it's very, very cool. I would like to see ZT start to incorporate that on some more. If that was part of the licensing, I'm really not sure. But let's go ahead and talk about these two knives in particular. The ZT, as I mentioned, was based off of this model called the Airborne. It is a very, very funky sort of compound grind, reverse tanto cliff, harpoony, who knows what it's called. This is the GTC blade shape. Really and truly, Gus has pioneered this blade shape, and he really likes it. He finds it's nice to have a flat area to do some push cuts, and then the middle tanto tip, and then the functional outer tanto tip. He likes this in terms of his blade grinds, and it certainly lends a very unique character to his knives. Whether you like the design or not is not necessarily important. This is really a very borderline art/functional tactical knife, and Gus really intends to make a statement with each one of these, and so you're not going to find regular drop point style blades and very often. And why is that? It's because it's already been done. Gus has already done that. He's been making knives, and lots of them, for a long time, and so he is more interested in making the knives that he really enjoys and he finds beautiful. Now, what is truly impressive about what Gustavo is doing today, now in 2019, is that he started forging some of his own materials. One of the things that impresses me about any knife maker is whether they can forge their own materials. One of the reasons I love Robert Carter so much is that he forges his own Damascus and Timascus. This is a titanium Damascus right here. We call this black robtanium. It's got zirconium and different alloys of titanium. We've talked about this in many other videos on my channel. Well, now Gus has taken to doing that himself. He recently built a forge and went and studied with some of the masters. And he started making his own Damascus steel and titanium Damascus for his knives. And so this piece right here is a truly full sole authorship piece, and we're going to get into those details, and it's so cool. Really, that just elevates him to yet another level of knife making mastery, and it's very cool. Yes, he can integrate materials made by others, but now that he's forging his own, the potential is infinite, and I'm very excited to see how this goes. So let's take a look at these two knives. They're largely the same size, although they vary very slightly in their handle sort of configuration. They're quite large knives. You're going to see this knife comes in at almost 4 inches right here. This knife as well, with this very long blade, coming in at just under maybe 3.8, 3.9 inches on the actual blade. The handle kind of covers up part of it right there. I'll bring out another couple of knives as a size comparison. Here is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, and here is the Para 3. So you can see it's much bigger than any of those knives. Let me bring out the Spyderco Subvert. This is a full 4-inch bladed knife, maybe even 4.1 inches, and that is just a little bit bigger than these GTC knives. So when you get a full-size GTC, it is truly a full-size knife. Let's break these knives down anatomically and see what we're working with. I'm going to start with this one and save the best for last. One of the fun things that Gus does with his knives, he inscribes on the inside what the blade steel is. And so this is an LMAX core Sanmai Airborne, Stampede. The model is Stampede. It says it right there inside. Stampede SLT LMAX 2018. This knife I watched my friend Josh purchase from Gus at the Blade Show 2018. This one features an LMAX core Sanmai. This is something that Gus was really working with very primitively at that point. This was one of the first ones that he ever did like that. It features a mosaic Damascus inlay on the handle. Now this is faded a little bit. This one has been heat blued. It's a steel, Damascus steel insert that's been heat blued, and that's faded over some time as this knife has been handled and carried by my friend Josh. This can be easily redone. Gus even volunteered to do it before the video, but I felt that that wasn't really necessary, and Josh did not want to do that either right now. But it is easy to do, and he is more than willing to fix that. You'll also notice this features some titanium Damascus here on the clip, as well as some on the back spacer. And then as the year progressed, this knife came from 2019's Blade Show. This one features 420 stainless with a D2 core, the Airborne with the SLT. This one features full sole authorship sort of black Damascus. I'm not sure what Gus is calling his materials yet, but this is a titanium Damascus with zirconium. So this is one more step. This is very similar to the black Robtanium you might see like on this P40 clip, which also has some zirconium in it. That's made by Rob Carter. This one is made by Gus. Similarly, also the Alpha Knife Supply black Damascus, very similar because it's zirconium and titanium. But notice the diamond-like pattern that Gus has achieved on his. Absolutely awesome. It's a liner lock construction with these big slabs of this stuff. Also notice this wicked skull backspacer. This is a Michael Ziba pile of skulls backspacer. We'll look at that here in a second. Both of these knives are running on the GTC bearings, and the actions are very smooth. You know, I think I've been told by many people that the actions on GTC knives are not excellent. And I am just like, maybe those are the older knives, because these newest ones are incredibly smooth. Yes, you have to get used to using the SLT deployment, but the action is incredibly, incredibly smooth. Now, these knives are not without flaws. This knife in the closed position has the ever so slightest amount of wiggle on the detent, but it doesn't touch the backspacer and it stops immediately. And does not move at all in the locked position at all. This knife does not have that same problem. It's mechanically perfect. Sometimes what you will find is that as you get into these sort of higher end art style knives, some of the minor mechanical perfections that we like to see in like CNC style knives, you have to give a little bit of forgiveness in those minor details so that you can achieve these sort of high-end art knives. These are very, very impressive knives, and I am blown away by how nice they are. So let's do a nice flyby of each of these knives. Again, taking a look here at the LMAX core Sanmai, feather Damascus inlay. Take a look at the texturing going on the handle. This is one piece of titanium. Note the finish differences on here. Gustavo is known for making art style pieces And a lot of that is accentuated by using excellent finish work. Notice the nice reflectivity on the Damascus. This was highly polished. There's a high polish to the flats of the handle, and then this jigged pattern that's also been smoothed out, done by hand. Absolutely incredible. Now, Gus does use CNC for some of his work. He uses a combination of CNC and hand work at this point. Some of his knives are fully handmade, but this is 2019, and he fully embraces the technological side of things. But a significant amount is done by hand. Yes, he cuts some of these out, and some of these sharp lines are done with a CNC, some of the rough lines, but the finish work and all of the vision also come from his mind. Incredible action on that knife. Very, very smooth. This one here with the D2 core Sanmai and the 420 stainless cladding. This awesome black Damascus sole authorship scale. Let me clean this off here. Something else I hadn't mentioned is check out the pattern that he's milled in there. Sort of a random geometrical pattern. You see that on both sides, matching patterns. Very neat. Really shows that he wants to bring out the full depth of this material, but he also doesn't want to overload the senses. He puts a nice little design there, but lets the rest of the material speak for itself. Integrated hidden hardware clips here. You'll notice he puts his logo here, GTC. And the backspacer again on this one is the pile of skulls from Mike Ziba. This one looks like a titanium Damascus with some cross-hatching and a floating style. There's not enough time for me to make a video long enough to explain how amazing Gus is. Not only is he an innovative maker, creating new things like bearings, flipper systems, and overall designs, he's also a dedicated craftsman now that he's making his own titanium Damascus and Damascus steels. He's also a very nice guy. I've gotten to speak to him in person, and he's very humble, and he's very happy to talk knives, and he's extremely friendly. He has a lovely family that he brings with him to all the shows, and it's just really nice to buy a product from someone that you know is a good guy. Not only does he innovate with himself and for himself, but he also collaborates with a lot of other members of the community, and you can find collaborations with people like Bob Terzola and others, and just incredible, incredible kindness and craftsmanship coming from GTC. So a lot of folks will know the zero tolerance model, but not a lot of videos floating around about his custom knives. Now you've gotten to see that his customs are just super special, and why Zero Tolerance went out of their way to make a collaborative effort with him. Well, let me know what you guys think of these knives down below, and if you've had any experience with GTC knives. Always good to leave some positive comments. Go ahead and click like and subscribe to my YouTube channel here. Head over to Instagram, where you can follow me at Dr. Frunkey. You can follow Gus at GTC Knives. Head over and follow my friend Josh at Old Sluggy, and also at Don't Stop Now Productions. Thanks again to Josh. And thank you guys for watching this channel. It's always a joy to bring you these videos. If you feel compelled to help me out a little bit to keep my channel running, you can head over to patreon.com/Dr. Frunkey, where you can help support the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, take care.